Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Speak Out. My name is Christopher. I use he, him, and ze, them pronouns.
And I'm Judah. I use they and them.
And today for episode 4, we are going to be talking about queer media and queer representation.
I actually have some spicy takes about this.
This is the episode that will get outright canceled. No,
for
but
real.
for real, we're gonna be getting controversial. So if you don't want to hear that, maybe plug your ears. But yeah, so we have a list of characters each in kind of a good, bad, and headcanons we wish existed categories. And we'll just kind of go through them willy-nilly, get our opinions on them and stuff. But first, I would just like to welcome everyone back after a very long and deserved winter break that has now been over for 2 weeks. But thank goodness. And thank you for sticking with us. We've gotten like 14 streams on Spotify. One of our videos got 50 views. We're getting there. We're climbing the podcast ladder. So thank you so much. But Judah, would you like to go first? Pick from the hat of the doc we've got here.
I'm actually going to start with one that kind of really surprised me. There's a show on Netflix. It was canceled, unfortunately, sometime last year. The show's called Gentefied. It's a show about Latinx Americans in Los Angeles trying to save their neighborhood of Boyle Heights from being gentrified, hence the name. And one of the characters in the show is lesbian. And I start with this one because it's complicated, right? Like, I don't want to villainize my community, but there are hardly any discussions about queerness within the community. I think it becomes a very, like, us or them type thing, and that's not necessarily the case. You can be both, believe it or not.
Impossible.
And this is actually one of the first times, too, that I've seen two BIPOC women or two women of color within a relationship. I've seen women of color paired up with other white women paired up with other white women, but never had I seen two women of color, in a loving, trusting relationship with one another. But yeah, it was actually honestly really refreshing. There are some problems that the show tries to address, and unfortunately, they never get resolved because it was canceled.
Netflix's classic treatment of lesbians. No.
Yeah, it was canceled because there's this huge conflict between, there's one character, not Jessica. Oh, I can't remember her name.
I feel like you told me about this and you also thought her name was Jessica. Some other white lady name or something.
Her name's not, it's something, but in this show, it's kind of like the relationship serves a very specific purpose. It's to show kind of like, as this character becomes more and more entrenched in the art world, she has to choose between her neighborhood and her girlfriend who fights for this neighborhood, right? Versus her career as an artist. It's a very hard conversation, because artists obviously don't get appreciated as much as they do. But yeah, honestly, it was honestly really refreshing, and I'm really sad that it was canceled because now we don't have a conclusive end to their relationship.
Now we have to rely on AO3.
Yeah, exactly. That's unfortunate.
What did you say was on Netflix?
It's called Gentefied. It's on Netflix. It's 2 seasons. I feel like they had a feeling that they were gonna get canceled, so they kind of tried to end it, nicely, and like try to wrap it up in a bow, but it was still very, what's the word? Unfinished.
The present was poorly wrapped.
Yeah, it was exactly. There you go. It's a poorly wrapped present. But yeah, honestly, a good one. And I want to start with that one because that one was honestly near and dear to my heart, and I'm really sad it was canceled. We're hoping
a moment of silence for Gentefied.
Literally a moment of silence because that show was my life. I liked it a little bit better than One Day at a Time. I think One Day at a Time had a very sanitized version of queerness, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
But that's everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of like everything that we get. And this was kind of messy. It was messy. It felt more real. It felt more grounded in reality. But yeah.
Nice. That's a good first example. I guess I can also start with a good example. I'm also going to make sure that my computer is on Do Not Disturb so that none of my notifications are super loud. So let's do that real quick. Do Not Disturb. There we go. But yeah, my favorite show of all time, you can judge me if you want, is AMC's The Walking Dead. Anyone who knows me knows this. I have an AMC Walking Dead art wall in my apartment. Are you making fun of me? We have a guest with us today, by the way. One of our staff members who wanted to sit in on the podcast. And
I sat through Chris's excellent but definitely 15-minute monologue about The Walking Dead yesterday.
So when we were going through what representation examples for this episode. But starting with the good, I think I wrote a whole essay about it of course I did, for my politics and entertainment class I took I think it was last year. And one thing I love about The Walking Dead is like people are just allowed to exist. So like there's remnants of the old world. Like the first gay couple we meet are these two lovely guys named Aaron and Eric. Of course, a cis white gay couple, but I feel like it's pretty well done in this show. And they're living in basically, it was a gated community that when the apocalypse hit, they built up the walls and everybody just lived in this gated community with these like beautiful houses and stuff. It's supposed to be its own like self-sustaining thing. And our survivors get there and they've like finally found a safe place and they have this big dinner celebration. But there's like very realistic backhanded homophobia from the people. Like the world has ended. You know, marriage doesn't exist anymore. There's no, social boundaries or anything like that. But there's still like these old rich people who, were like this before and are still like this now, still treat this very like tame, I would say, gay couple like they're others. And there's this honestly kind of beautiful scene, which when we get into headcanons, I'll get more into why I love it so much. But it's Aaron and Eric eating spaghetti with Daryl, who is like kind of like a feral loner type, who, as I said, headcanon, this man is aromantic for fucking sure. Like, Jesus, I've never seen a more aromantic character without the name. But it's like these two very proper gays eating spaghetti while this guy is like has no manners and is just as outcast as him, but for other reasons. And yeah, there's like they don't ignore that like queerness can cause issues because of the way that people act towards gay people, but it's never like their storyline isn't there's homophobia in this society. It's these two guys happen to be gay in the zombie apocalypse, and then these people won't get over it. And then they get their own like beautiful love story. And like I don't want to call anything that happens in this show bury your gays because everybody dies.
Yeah, I was like, that might be a bit unfair.
Yeah,
it is a zombie apocalypse.
Like, yeah, all the gay couples die, but so does everybody else. Yeah, and so yeah, there's that gay couple, which if you watch the show, they do have a very tragic end, although Aaron does make it to the end of the show. And he also like acts as disabled representation because he becomes an amputee, and that's also a completely normal thing. So that's cool. There's also several examples of lesbian couples. There's Yumiko and Magna from the later seasons, who were actually a lawyer and a convict from before the apocalypse who fell in love. And then there's also Tara and Denise, who are just like these like it's like extrovert introvert type dynamic, and one's trying to get over her like social anxiety and trying to be like confident enough to be the doctor of the town when not feeling as qualified. And then Tara's like the get out there and go do something, have initiative. And of course they also have a tragic end, as does everybody. But it's just, I love a show that allows queer people to exist. And there's no, like, at least the main group is not judgmental. Like there's never like a thing where like Rick points out like, oh, Aaron's gay. Like it's just they just exist in the show. And yeah, that's part of why I love it. It's similar with like how kind of, well, besides the first season where they said the N-word 3 times because of the friggin' showrunner decided that's how they need to portray racism. After that guy left, Sorry, Frank Darabont. I don't give a fuck about you. You really didn't need to do that. Like, besides that, it's like the only show where I've seen only people of color be the ones to get out of a situation alive. Like, it's a cliche in the horror genre that, like, the black guy's gonna die first. And that's, like, Jordan Peele plays with that in all of his movies, right? That, like, the black main characters make it, and that subversion is, like, something you rarely ever see, like, even now. So it's...
No, I agree.
It's really cool that I think that show explores that a little bit. But yeah,
Interesting.
everybody watch it. All 11 seasons are on Netflix. But yeah, Jesus, dude, they have like a Nazi character in like the beginning of the show, and then people like complain that showrunner left, and I'm like, well, he wrote that, and also all of the women in the first season and a half are like the most pathetic, personality-less stereotypes you could ever imagine. So maybe it's good that he left.
Maybe.
There's a slight possibility that it could have improved things. But to be fair, the source material also treats women like shit, which is another thing I wrote about in the essay. So they've improved past what Robert Kirkman decided to write his women as. Thank goodness. But yeah, that's one of my examples.
Wow.
You want to talk about Harry Potter next?
Oh,
Since we both have a bad one from Harry Potter.
I don't know if it's a headcanon because I don't think it's ever been confirmed. Also, content warning for transphobia because this will get very intense. I hate the woman. Like, let me get this out of the way. I'm not talking about Harry Potter because I want to, but because I think it's necessary to kind of like, especially for people who are like, oh my god, J.K. Rowling's homophobic, I never knew. And like, this is kind of like one of like the earliest examples. So I was watching a video, I think it's Sean Vids, but correct me if I'm wrong, he did a video on Harry Potter and kind of like the politics of Harry Potter, and he mentioned something really interesting about the character Rita Skeeter, who was a character in the second book.
She's in a couple of them.
She's in a couple
she's also
of them.
in the Goblet of Fire. Yeah.
Yes, I think that's where she mainly, it's the Goblet of Fire that she mainly gets. I don't know why I thought Chamber of Secrets. It doesn't matter. The point is that Rita Skeeter is the way, if you read like the book, it's very clear that J.K. Rowling wrote her to be MTF. Like her version, her version of a trans woman. And I say that because it is all, like, Rita Skeeter is all the TERF stereotypes put into, like, one person. And you're supposed to hate this character. Like, you're supposed to hate Rita Skeeter. Like, she is this annoying, she's this annoying, like, paparazzi-esque character who writes all these, like, exposés on, you know, Harry Potter and the gang and all of that jazz. But the way she's described as having bigger hands.
Mannish hands.
Yeah, mannish hands. She's described as having, like, a strong jawline, which, by the way, I saw a Twitter post, sorry to sidetrack, I saw a Twitter post about how a lot of cis women are now having a lot of body insecurity because TERFs are tagging them as trans women.
Oh my god.
Because it's rough out here. Anyways, also, side note, trans women, you are beautiful.
Your strong jawlines if you have them.
Yeah, and
Hot
if you
as
have
hell.
strong, yes, I love a strong jawline. Anyways, back to Rita Skeeter. So yeah, she's characterized to be this kind of like, it's very obvious that she's supposed to be a trans woman, or at least Rowling's really messed up version of a trans woman.
She also turns into a beetle so she can spy on children.
Yes. That is another one too.
And she folds in the end because they're like, we'll tell the government that you turn into a beetle and spy on children. And she's like, oh shit. So she stops being evil.
Exactly. That's why like I know there's probably be somebody like, oh, was that really Rita Skeeter? And I'm gonna be like, yes, that was, if you go back in the books, that is how Rita
Read
Skeeter.
those very well written, aged fantastically books.
It aged so bad. I was like, honestly, I'm so embarrassed to have been a Harry Potter fan.
It's real. I have a Sorting Hat Build-A-Bear hat.
I got rid of it. I used to have a Ravenclaw cardigan that I used to wear, and I think I still have one of the Harry Potter wands that I bought.
Because they're so expensive.
They
You're
are
like, I don't want to
expensive.
throw it out, but I'm not going to fucking
Yeah, I'm
show
not
it to
gonna
anyone.
use it. But
Ugh.
yeah, and also the discourse around the game.
Oh my god. Like, sorry if that just peaked the audio. The fucking, there was this really funny TikTok that was like, me deciding if I should spend $60 on a transphobes game or support the trans community. I am a very smart person. And it's like a guy like sitting really thinking about it.
I think what's funny to me is the fact that people are like, I'm gonna buy the game anyway. And it's like, fine, I didn't need to know that. You didn't need to tell me that.
You don't have to tell. You can just be.
You can just have the game. I wouldn't have known any better.
Like, plenty of people.
Asshole in private.
Yeah, in private.
No,
like, plenty of people still watch
because...
PewDiePie and don't give a fuck. Like, you don't have to tell everyone about it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you don't need to air it out on Twitter. You know, you can just buy. Nobody's like, the thing is, the crazy part is that like nobody is stopping anyone from buying the game. I think most people are just saying, hey, you should be aware that when you buy this game, you're supporting J.K. Rowling, and it's probably best if you boycott it.
Yeah, people don't. I commented on one of those posts where it's like a lot of the people who are like will die on the hill of I should have the right to buy this shitty game, which is about stopping a goblin uprising, which we can get into if we want to. I wonder who the goblins are supposed to be. But but I was like, the hardest thing that these people have had to go through is getting another hobby. Like, I promise. People are like, you know what's sad is like a lot of I will say AFAB in this case because I haven't yet seen an example of like AMAB trans people with the same opinion, but it's the internet. I'm sure it exists somewhere, but I've seen a disproportionate amount of like AFAB non-binary people on TikTok or like people, or I guess trans not affected by trans misogyny.
Oh, there you go.
Trans misogyny. What's it called?
Transmisogyny exempt.
Exempt. That's it. Yeah. Transmisogyny.
We do need to have a conversation about that because I guess we can save it for a future episode because people think that being called transmisogyny exempt is like a...
You don't experience transphobia.
Yeah. But that's not what people are saying. People are saying that's a lot different for trans women, that it's a lot more dangerous for trans women because historically they have been... There's statistics to back this up. There have been more trans women that have been killed.
And imprisoned and assaulted.
And it's just like a whole entire thing. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, I was just... So a lot of... I'll reword to say trans misogyny exempt trans people, usually white trans people also. Will be like, oh, well, this has been my interest since I was 6 years old. And like, you're taking away my childhood from me. Like very, everybody's kind of heard it. Like, this is my thing and you're taking it away from me. And it's like,
I'm sorry, I will bully you.
Like, I'm just gonna like, first of all, like if you're, I'm sorry, if not to roast you, if you're like past your teen years and Harry Potter is a fundamental part of your personality still, I challenge you to find some like, that's just, I don't know. It's a little embarrassing at this point.
Is that there's so many new, like the fantasy scene. The fantasy scene is growing in diversity. There's so many new fantasy stories up there. So many queer fantasy stories that you can gravitate towards, and instead you choose Harry Potter.
Yeah, I promise it'll only hurt for like a couple weeks, and then you'll get over it.
Right.
But yeah, we're spending a lot of time on Harry Potter if we want to move on. But also Dumbledore being gay, I just want to mention, I don't even know why she bothered saying that after the books came out, because the only thing we see him slightly being attracted to men is his weird favoritism with Harry Potter, who is a child. So I wonder what she thinks about gay people. And the AIDS allegory with werewolves, who the werewolf attacks kids.
You could just have a whole episode on like the dog whistles in Harry Potter.
Yeah, don't buy the games, guys, please.
Intense. I will give you an option for a good game.
Oh, good idea.
It is accidental. I can actually prove this because it's actually been said that it was an accident. A good accident nonetheless.
Happy accidents. As
Happy
Belzer
accidents.
also would
Skyrim. In Skyrim, you can marry. So there's a lot of problems with Skyrim. Like, I could go through it all day. But you can marry somebody of the same gender. So they only have two genders, right? Like, there's no in between. But also, this game was made in like 2011.
or even earlier than
Even
that.
earlier,
I feel like,
I think, yeah. So I'm not gonna like harp on it too much. You only have pretty much woman, man. But you can marry
Man
like,
in skull hat.
you can marry people of the same gender.
Ooh.
They had done it originally because supposedly it was just easier that way. So they didn't actually do it as like
instead of like
yeah,
refusing you
so
from
it wasn't
doing
like a political statement. It wasn't like Bethesda was like, oh, we're dying for gay rights now, right? Because at the time, I think people were still, because gay marriage didn't get legalized until 2015. And I think at that point, people were still organizing around gay marriage. But Bethesda, as a gaming, they don't really care. They didn't really care about that. So I think this was like I said, like this was like a complete accident. They were kind of just like, well, it's easier to just code everything pretty much the same. So that's what they did, and so now you can marry like my characters can marry whoever they want. Sims is also the same thing too. I think. Similarly, I guess. Sims 4 changed it a bit. I think Sims 3, it was kind of an accident. Sims 4 was able to create a we good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
If I'm skipping out on audio, I'll get it from the. It's Wi-Fi's being terrible again.
All right, no worries. Just wanted to make sure we were good.
Yeah.
The Sims 4 has also been a pinnacle for.
Oh yeah, all the flags and stuff.
Yeah. Maxis, the company. I'm actually really surprised because I didn't think EA would be that open to doing all of that. And there's still not a lot of flags like on there. Like they didn't catch the breadth of flags that we have in the community.
But they got quite a few of them. But
they did have a lot of them. They even had the ally flag, which I thought was funny. But yeah, and also in Sims 2, you can also marry people of the same gender and have families. It's actually really cute.
Yeah, what's up?
We just lost the stream.
Yeah, I sensed that.
Yeah.
We are recording on like an iPad and my phone, so
Yeah.
No worries. Thanks for letting us know. Okay,
Technical
it's not me then.
At the
Well,
number one
I can say
university.
whatever I want.
Now Jake, you can say whatever.
I'm gonna get canceled.
I guess there's no point in speaking into the microphone anymore, but I kind of like sitting here and it looks professional on the video. But for people listening, if there's a severe drop in quality about 30 minutes in, I think his name's Lucas. Lucas just told us that the stream dropped, but that's okay.
Okay.
We've had worse problems.
Yes.
At least Judah sounds good in my ears.
You sound fine too. I mean, I'm not sensing any problems, but also I don't know what that means internally. I don't have anybody who's listening on stream right now that could be like, yes, it is going well. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. We're making queer. You know what? We're making queer representation right now in the podcast realm.
Talk about that. Yeah.
We're trying.
We're trying so hard. Yeah. But yeah, we love The Sims. Shout out to The Sims. Shout out to Skyrim, I guess, which is fun because I feel like they're like it's way too complicated for me to say.
I mean, I
reject.
It was honestly, I don't want people to give Bethesda too much credit. Like, I don't think what's his name, Todd Howard. I don't think Todd Howard sat there and was like, you know what we're gonna do?
I love you, gay people.
We're gonna be championing gay rights. That's our company.
And then they made a Discord bot out of him.
Did they?
Yeah, he's in like 3 servers I'm in.
Oh my god, of course.
Todd Howard is so funny. What a funny guy.
What a funny man.
But yeah, no, it was just easier. It was easier for them to code everything the same, so that's what they did.
Icon. Convenience gay? I appreciate it. We could. So let's talk about a complicated. I want to end with The Last of Us because I feel like it's very relevant and very sexy and very wonderful. Sexy in a cool way, not sexy in a the characters are sexy because they're kids. Sorry, I made it weird. I don't know why I specified what I meant. I'm sure everybody knew what I meant. But anyways, Euphoria. Rue and Jules.
Euphoria, Rue
and
Jules. I have opinions about that because I read a them piece.
Mm-hmm. Shout out to Fem.
Not Fem, them.
Oh, them.
Them.
Just kidding.
Sorry,
yeah,
not
fuck
Fem.
you,
Sorry,
Fem.
It
Get out.
wasn't you, it was actually them. I read a them piece about the Nate Jacobs bit in
Oh, yeah.
Lexi's play, and I had to disagree with it heavily. I think the implication that Nate Jacobs was homosexual because he liked Jules, like, really threw me off. I was like, that's not... Because the implication with Nate Jacobs, sorry, I don't want to talk about Nate Jacobs a lot because we're talking about Rue and Jules. The implication was that Jules is actually, like Jules was a man and not a trans woman. Like, it was... And I understood where they were coming from. I understood the point. But I was like, you could have just not mentioned Jules at all. Because it is true. Nate does struggle with homosexuality throughout.
Like toxic masculinity.
Yeah, toxic masculinity, homosexuality, all of that. He does struggle with that. But I think to mention Jules as kind of like, to cite Jules.
Because that's really the only thing. Like, he's uncomfortable being around, like, dicks in the locker room. Because his dad, like, he found his dad's sex tapes when he was a child.
Right.
Like, that's why. It's not because he's like, I can't look because I'm gay and I also like...
So I had to, like, disagree with it. It's just
with
like...
her play, Lexi's take, or the
Not
article?
Lexi's take. I think Lexi's take was fine. It was very camp. I was fine. Like, a lot of people were upset about it, but I was fine with it, mostly because I think the argument that hit dogs will holler was kind of silly overall. Because I think, like, not to give Lexi any credit, or Sam Levinson any credit at that.
Boo, Sam Levinson.
But, like, I think it was, I do truly think she was making fun of him and the fact that, you know, he does struggle with toxic masculinity. That whole bit was more, I think, for me, was more about toxic masculinity than it was about his gayness or his supposed gayness. I also think, too, that citing Jules as the reason for his gayness was kind of problematic. Like, I don't think... Jules does not identify as a man. Jules is not a man.
Jules is not a man. And also, Jules transitioned before a lot of people transitioned.
Right,
like,
exactly. I don't think Nate Jacobs clocked Jules.
Apparently, like, he was supposed to in the first episode, and they took it out.
Yeah.
That he was supposed to clock.
Yeah, the only reason he knows is because he saw the tape with Jules and his dad, which is ill, by the way. What?
Nate's dad, the whole thing at the end of the second season,
icky.
where, spoiler alert, the dad, like, escapes the family and hangs out with a bunch of gay people in a warehouse and then gets arrested and is sad about it. You had sex with a lot of children.
It is
Sorry,
really,
dude.
it's like a really icky sequence. But let's get to Rue and Jules.
The main
Speaking
couple.
of Jules, the main couple of Euphoria. That is Euphoria is centered around the relationship, and it's complicated. It's messy. You know, I will give Sam Levinson that. It's messy. I do like messy. I know people are like, oh, well, we should have nice, healthy, queer things.
But I feel like in a show that is messy, it's fine to have something
Right.
messy.
And
It's
I
not
also,
like the only
I
thing.
also think, too, that, like, sometimes I think people want a sanitized version of queerness, but I don't think that's ever achievable. Because there's a homophobe, a transphobe, a queerphobe, etc. is not
angry that it's messy.
Yeah, it's not angry that it's messy. They're angry because it's you. You know what I mean? Like, they're not angry because it's, like, messy and weird and all of that. They're angry because you exist.
And you know what's actually funny is, like, a lot of people I saw on TikTok, I guess, who aren't LGBT, didn't know Jules was trans. They didn't, because like I loved Jules. I think Jules as a trans character is a great character.
I do too. I think that episode, there's a special episode.
Oh, absolutely
Which
beautiful.
is funny because then...
She wrote it.
She wrote it. Okay, here's the funny part. So, her name, Hunter
Schafer.
Hunter Schafer wrote the episode. But then, there was like this whole controversy. I don't know if anyone saw it.
Oh,
It happened really quickly and then disappeared really quickly.
Yeah, she like commented on a
He
post that was like
supported-
blaming non-binary people for
exactly.
anti-trans legislation.
Yeah, and I was like, you wrote this whole entire episode talking about how you did not want your transness to be associated, or your transition to be associated with how men see you. But then you're blaming, like you went around and then started blaming non-binary people for anti-trans.
Like, cause people say, and she like apologized about it or something, but like her argument is like, I think it's okay for, or at least from what I remember, I can totally be misremembering, but she was like, she wasn't trying to blame non-binary people. She was trying to like talk about systemic issues or whatever. But like the original post, she didn't write it. She just like commented in agreement.
Yeah.
And the original post did in fact blame non-binary people and people who don't medically transition.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I feel like it's fine if you kind of in a you know, sometimes we like something on TikTok and then scroll back a minute later and like, actually, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
After you think about it. But
I've
like
had that.
taking no accountability and being like, oh, like I didn't even register, or, you know, I was incorrect about this specific part, but this is what I was getting at. I feel like that's more important than saying like, I did, you know, you guys are completely wrong about what I said, because like it's clear what you meant.
Right. And then to get back in Rue and Jules' relationship, it's a very, like, when it's good, it's a very cute one. When it's...
One sec. Yes. Oh, we're good? Oh, great.
Awesome.
Here, let me log back in.
Sorry, I was saying you're good. I'm just thinking. I'm just trying to figure out.
Oh, gotcha.
Don't-
Staring wistfully. Yeah, cool.
So, yeah, back to Rue and Jules' relationship. Very complicated. Because you have, on one hand, you have Rue, who's an addict, who struggles, obviously, with drugs, addiction. On the other hand, you have Jules, who is trying her best to kind of not be so... Trying her best to kind of be... Like, she struggles a lot with mental health. And I think...
Yeah, she gets institutionalized.
Right. And I think the whole entire struggle, too, is that Rue kind of... And this is something that a lot of people have talked about, is the fact that Rue kind of uses Jules as a substitution for drugs. And when things go wrong with Jules, he turns back to the drugs. And a lot of it feels like it's on Jules to kind of save Rue. When, you know, obviously it's a lot more nuanced and complicated than that. That's why I said, like, it's a complicated relationship because it's not neat, it's not perfect, it's not, you know, it's not like Heartstopper, where you have these teenagers who are, like, happily in love. This is a really, like, dark and gritty story. Sam Levinson does not mess around.
No. I gotta say, I feel like there were a lot of Jules haters for season 2 in particular, because of everything with Elliot. Was that his name?
Yeah.
So I think, here's the thing. I'm a Jules defender when it comes to this show. Honestly, just because
See, I'm a Jules defender, but I'm an Elliot hater.
Oh, Elliot okay. He's, you know, he's so hot and charming, and
because I think Elliot, like, my beef with Elliot was the fact that he knew that Rue was an addict.
And just kept giving her...
Yeah, and kept giving her drugs.
And also, oh my god, okay, so I blame Sam Levinson entirely for this. Jules goes, I am a lesbian. I am no longer interested in being involved with men in that way. And the next episode, she cheats on Rue with a man. And I understand that, like, people who potentially previously identified as bisexual or some, like, maybe there's some sort of message about...
Well, and I just don't think Sam Levinson has the...
He's a straight white guy.
He's a straight white guy. I don't think he has the bandwidth to discuss compet.
Because that's the word I was looking for. Like struggling with compet as like someone who thought they were attracted to men but isn't anymore. And then she's also very emotionally vulnerable, and he takes advantage of her. After Rue is kind of like shoved to the side because she's going off the deep end, he starts flirting with Jules after she previously said, "I do not want to date men." And he takes advantage of her vulnerability, and it's implied that they don't show it, which is funny because honestly they would show it if it was in season 1, but they imply that they sleep together. And then Elliot tells Jules about Rue's like the severity of how she's relapsed, and then people saying that Jules deserved like the emotional beating that Rue gave to her when she told her mom.
Somebody said that was an exercise in. I remember that episode very clearly because I remember crying during that episode because it was so intense.
It was really intense.
Because I root for Rue. You're like I'm rooting for you, and then for her
we were all rooting for you.
Yeah, it was just so like it was a good episode, and somebody said it was an exercise in abolition. How far?
What?
Yeah, an exercise in abolition, like prison abolition. Because a lot of people who are in prison for like non-offensive drug charges, people who struggle, like it tends to be a lot of people who struggle with addiction.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant Rue's speech.
Oh no, not Rue's.
I was
Rue's
like,
speech is not the episode.
Oh, gotcha.
The entirety of the episode is a kind of like, because I think that's the episode where she runs. Right?
Yeah, that episode is
away.
really good, I have to say, in terms of how tense it is.
She did such a good job.
I think she won an Emmy.
Yeah.
Didn't she? Yeah.
Because somebody said that was an exercise, that was testing. Like that was
because the mom doesn't want her to go to prison. She wants her to get better.
Exactly. It was testing all of our collective love for Rue, which sounds kind of silly, but it's true. Like you're rooting for Rue to get better, and every time she falls, it hurts your heart all the more. Even though we knew that she was like relapsing, when she got angry at Jules, like it hurts. Like it hurts because you think that they're building this relationship throughout the last 2 seasons, and they finally come back together, and then now like her addiction kind of gets in the way again, and it's just like it's a whole entire ordeal. Very good episode.
I honestly, okay, Sam, we hate you, but that was a good episode. But I have to like it really broke my heart how many, like, she says the famous thing where it's like, you don't like to be loved, you like the idea of being loved, or something like that.
I do think that Rue was angry.
Yeah, but I feel like, and I feel like people say that's a very realistic portrayal of what happens when someone's so deep into substance abuse.
That is true.
They lose that regulation.
Yeah.
But people saying like everything Rue said is correct, like fuck Jules, this is her fault. And she told Rue's mom while Elliot is sitting in the room with them. And I'm like,
well, it is hard because Jules, like, not that Jules deserved the verbal abuse, verbal beating from Rue, because obviously Rue's angry, but
doing it right after
doing it right,
yeah.
It is especially shitty too, like given the fact that like Elliot, and Rue was right about Elliot, he's a high functioning drug addict, and that was the only reason why Jules still continued to hang out with him, right? Because I think one of the conditions of their relationship was that Rue doesn't touch drugs.
And that's Jules, like, people say, like, because they like rob a drugstore or something for beer, and people are like, why did Jules put beer in the backseat and expect Rue not to drink it? And it's like, she's under the implication that Rue has been clean for like a really long time.
It is like I said, that episode is very difficult because it is a very difficult conversation.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like, I hate people's like hard and fast. Rue was correct, Jules is wrong. Like that.
I don't think Jules was wrong. I do think Jules was wrong for cheating for sure.
Oh yeah,
Jules was definitely wrong in that regard, but
Mhm.
also I don't think she deserved. I don't think she deserves all the smoke. I really think it's Elliot who does. I'm sorry. Do you remember that 3 minutes of singing?
Oh my god, I was gonna mention that,
Like,
honestly, and then they released it. Oh my
that
god.
was like my beef.
Elliot's song.
I'm an Elliot hater. Number one Elliot hater. Like, I'm not a Jew.
If every other hater is dead, if there's one hater, it's me, and if there's no haters, I'm dead. Like,
in the last few minutes, let's transition to The Last of Us.
oh yes.
So that way, we can touch on it, because it's actually The Last of Us 2 specifically, because I don't think in the first one it's not really mentioned.
Yeah, so the first one, it's like the most beautiful father-daughter relationship you've seen in a video game before, obviously. But there's the DLC, Left Behind, which goes into... By the way, if you are watching the HBO show, we are going to spoil some shit.
Yeah, if you have not played the game...
And you want to watch the show with no
spoilers...
spoilers...
No, the game has been out for a while.
It's been out since 2013,
I'm sorry, I'm not
but
gonna
spoiler alert.
It because you're watching the show on HBO Max.
Yeah, but in the DLC, we get to see the day that Ellie got bitten. And she is with this girl who also goes to like the military school, because Ellie was born after the apocalypse happened. So she was immediately put into like a U.S. military school, and she sneaks out with another girl named Riley, who I think is either the daughter of Marlene or is like somehow connected to Marlene. And they both get they kiss, like they have a beautiful day together. They go on a carousel, and then they both get bitten, and they both are resigned to dying together, and then Ellie survives. And she brings that trauma into her story with Joel. And like in the first episode of the HBO Max show, Marlene says, like, Ellie calls Marlene a terrorist because she's with the Fireflies, which is like the rebel organization. And she goes, was Riley a terrorist? And because Riley ended up, like, she was working with Marlene.
But that's kind of the dilemma in the second game too.
Yeah.
Because it continues. It's like continuity. They continue that when Ellie grows up and she's going on this journey with Dina.
Yes, Dina is her. Dina is bisexual in the game, which is cool. Yes. She dates Jesse and actually has his child, but she is ends up being in a committed relationship with Ellie, who is canonically a lesbian. And it's funny, I saw someone mention it. They're in Seattle, and I've been to Seattle quite a few times. It's the first place my parents moved when they moved to America. And it's so funny because Capitol Hill is where they are. It's like the queer district in Seattle. And them going through in the game, I'm like, oh, I know what that store is. And like, look at all the... But in the game, Ellie doesn't recognize what a rainbow flag is. Because she was born during the apocalypse.
Right. This is like a completely different universe.
Yeah, but that's another thing too, like I mentioned with The Walking Dead, like Ellie's allowed to be queer, but there is still prevalent homophobia from the people who existed in the old world. Like she gets called the D-slur by like an old guy at the dance in the town.
Yeah.
She goes, he's like, oh, just what we need, another loudmouth D-slur. And then Joel goes to beat the shit out of him. And Ellie actually gets angry at Joel for standing up for her in that way because she feels like she can take care of herself. And that's kind of the argument that gets them into that, plus the whole revealing that Joel killed everyone and they can't make the cure, and that was her whole purpose. Like that whole thing. But that was like kind of one of their last arguments before Joel's death.
And then it kind of, that trauma really continues into the relationship. Because the relationship is also pretty messy. It's not clean. It's messy, you know? She has to deal with the fact that... Because Dina's pregnant, too.
Dina's pregnant, and she has the baby, and they reunite near the end of the game when Ellie has, like, killed, like, all of Abby's friends. Like, everybody. And she goes back to Dina, and Dina's like, I need you to stay with me. Like, we have a child. We need to move past this. Tommy, who is Joel's brother, is in danger. He's really hurt. He got shot. Like, you need to let this go. And Ellie chooses revenge over Dina.
Oh, yeah,
and Dina leaves.
That's really sad. That was like, that hurt me personally. I was like, no, you mean I can't choose?
And I saw, I know. And I saw, I've been seeing a lot of Abby defenders on my For You page, which I appreciate, because when I first watched it, I was like, yeah, fuck Abby. But when you think about it more, it's
it's a really hard moral dilemma.
It's Abby. I saw this metaphor that after Joel's death, Ellie took on all of his worst traits and Abby took on all of his best traits. So she actually recreates the story of Joel and Ellie, like a father figure helping a child figure with Lev, who is actually a trans masculine character in the game.
True.
So,
Oh.
like even the parallels of like in the very end when they're like Lev and Abby have been tortured by some other sect in the game. And the way that Abby picks up Lev's body perfectly parallels when Joel did that to Ellie in the hospital. Like it's very purposeful, and that's why you play as Abby, is because you know you're supposed to and it's still very hard because you saw her kill Joel with a golf club. But you're supposed to realize that like this is the same story you went through the first time.
Right.
But I have to say, Lev, I really like, as first of all, barely any trans masculine representation in anything, right? So like seeing that, because everyone was like, knew that there was a trans character, and the playthroughs I was watching, I watched people like stream it, people thought that Abby was trans because she was muscular. And then Lev comes up, who actually has an explicit trans storyline. He like, he's a part of like, I think it's either religious or like very tradition-based kind of sect where the women have long braids and the men have shaved heads, and he shaves his head and he gets he either runs away or he's exiled. And he meets Abby, who is the enemy of that group, and Abby takes him in.
Quite unfortunate because we're gonna have to end our conversation.
Yeah,
and it got really good. We should have started with the Last of Us.
Yeah. Are there any people out there?
I don't see anyone.
We could, if you can stay for a few moments, we can finish up and then.
Yeah, let's finish up real quick, and let's.
But yeah, I don't want to keep anyone past too long. But yeah, Lev is such a small character too. It's just like a support character. But I think just the fact of him being trans, like, obviously didn't have to happen, but it's a beautiful part of his story.
Hopefully we get more of that in video games. I really am excited to see, especially with the new generation of queer folk, you know, what we get in terms of art and video games. But
yeah. And we were going to talk about things like Hannibal and you headcanon Arthur Morgan from Redemption.
Okay.
But we can, honestly, we can do a part 2 of this.
Yeah, why not?
So yeah, if you enjoyed, press the like button, smash that subscribe button. And also, I realize if you're listening to this on Spotify, rate our podcast, and then that like kind of boosts it to other people. So if you like it, please rate, please like us on YouTube. But yeah, so I guess any last thoughts, and then I'll do our little spiel at the end.
Nope, that is it.
Awesome. Okay, so you can follow us, OutWrite, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at OutWrite Newsmag. You can check out all of our online articles. We post twice a week on our website, outrightenewsmag.org. That's right, spelled WRITE. I have been Christopher.
And I've been Judah.
And we will see you next Thursday for our next installment of Speak Out. Goodbye.